Look at this. Isn't it like the perfect angle? Well, I mean, perfect for me.
I'm cold.
She's cold. It's just a little, just a hair chillier than it ought to be. Come on. We straight? I don't know. Looks okay to me.
Oh, hello.
Well, extremely still. If you want the weather update, it's very still. It's like Thanksgiving Day weather. If it was maybe just this or maybe a hair colder. And that's when you have your giant turkey at like 1 in the afternoon and then take a walk and try to get some of it dealt with. Thanksgiving's coming up, you know.
I had no idea. Sorry, I just woke up from a nap.
We don't have a turkey yet.
No, we don't. And I don't know what's going to be for dessert.
Aren't you in favor of pies?
Yep, I mean, I don't know what kind of pie.
You make a great apple pie.
Well, thank you. But Sadie usually does dessert on Thanksgiving. I usually just clean.
Yeah, you don't do anything. Sadie and I kind of dance around each other in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And we make everything. I asked Willow what she wants for Thanksgiving because she hates everything, all Thanksgiving food.
Except for the canned cranberry.
Except for canned cranberry.
And the Pillsbury crescent rolls.
I said, well, I can make you like box mac and cheese. And she thought real hard about that for a second. And she's like, well, it's not really special. I'm like, well, I'll think about it, I guess.
Okay.
So anyway, it's Friday. You can't stop the music. Should we talk about our wristwatches?
Sure. It's better than our pocket watches.
It's true. I don't have a pocket watch on me. Anyway, let's do wrist check. There you go, wearing your Panda.
Yep.
Did it just call out to you?
Yes.
That's a nice Panda. Mm-hmm. It's got a little bit of patina on the dial, not a ton. It's original. It's a nice watch. I'm glad you like it.
Mm-hmm.
I got the fuzzies on it. I'm wearing my Field Arnie. I saw this watch. I was going through organizing the stuff we have on the website. This is on the website for sale, which I looked at it, but I grabbed it and I was like, geez, this is a nice watch. When the Arnie movement first came out, this was the first watch. This was the flagship model. Not the actual Arnie, but this one. It's rare to see them in this condition. Same team designed 6105 and the 6309. And this was the first ashtray. Beautiful watch. It's unfaded. Anyway, I'm wearing it. I love it. Okay. Well, wasn't that fun?
Oh, yeah.
We haven't done it yet.
Well.
I'm waiting on you.
Oh, me. Okay. From mail call last week, Greener Rick? I don't know. Could you please share your thoughts on the Seiko Spring Drive movements?
I wish I knew more about them. One way that I heard them, do you want me to get you like an additional coat or something?
No, I have an electric blanket.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm just getting my hands warm.
Somebody once described them, I saw it somewhere, that they were, in essence, kind of a quartz watch. In that, it's like a sort of a mecha quartz in a way. You have the spring drive, you have the automatic winder, and you have the spring, and part of the spring power, it's sort of split. And so the power goes to the train, and the power also generates power for the CMOS, which uses a magnetic braking system to be a governor on a perpetually spinning one direction balance, which is, I guess, a balancer of a flywheel, really, actually, if you want to think of it that way. It's not a balance, it's a flywheel. And the number of rotations is governed by a CMOS. So I think it's incredibly neat technology. I've never seriously considered owning one.
I thought you have owned one.
No, I've never owned a spring drive. I've never even seen a spring drive in person outside of a watch shop.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
And the last time I saw one I was at About Time, which is down in Denver. was the last time, one of the last times I went to that shop down there, and I saw that.
Oh.
They're cool. If you know, if it was something I felt like I needed to invest in, I'd do it. I think they're cool. I don't. I can't say if I would bond with one or not. But I don't know. There you go. There are my impressions.
True Blue Miata. Question about the 7AX8 SVS manual. It showed an adjustment trimmer. I recall you saying that the only shortcoming of these is that it lacked a trimmer, having only several wires to clip to adjust accuracy. Am I misremembering?
Yeah, there's two things. The 7A does have a trimmer. The same exact kind of trimmer still used today in the 9F series. It's like a little brass double-sided finger thing, and it's in a hole in the circuit, and the two tippy points go like this, and it changes, and it acts as a trimmer. The one you're thinking of is the 7C. It has two little things, and you can cut one or the other to try to adjust accuracy, but beyond that, they're set.
And then he asked, have you looked at the SPB 317 Slim Willard reissue? It looks good with Sapphire 6R movement and scratch-resistant coating. Oh. Then there's something else. So why don't we talk about that?
I don't know the first thing about it. I haven't heard anything about it. And in fact, I don't remember seeing that question. I must have just...
You copied his whole thing.
I copied the whole thing. So when I read these questions, right? And so I'm going in the morning on Friday, and I'm looking through all the questions. I read every question that comes in. I'm picking and choosing which ones. And I usually start composing a response in my head while I'm copying and pasting. I probably read the first part of your thing and then was answering that in my head and didn't read the second part of it. I will have to look at that. I will insert a picture of the SPB 317 here. Okay, so based on, my super deep dive of 5 minutes of interneting, I don't know, maybe it might have been more than 5 minutes. Who knows? I can pack a lot of action in a short amount of time. It has the crown at 412 or whatever that is. Instead of the crown being right at 4, it's slightly down more. And the date is at that lower position, unframed on the dial, instead of at 3, because it's apparently an ISO requirement. Though I don't know why you couldn't have the outer pip be loomed and have that be all right. I don't know, what's up with that. I didn't see enough. I saw the sort of the frosted looking Seiko on the dial. I didn't know if it was applied. I don't think so. I think it's printed. So that's going to be kind of different. The markers, they went with rounded corners rather than the sharp corners of the original. And it looks like the top of the markers are frosted, not high polish. It's just a difference, they chose to do. The pip is smaller, and it really does change the look of those inserts. I really like the bigger pip, but maybe I'm just, biased against those. $900. It's, it's a good-looking watch, and it certainly is going to harken back to the original. The date thing, it bothers other people more than me. I think it drives Saulbrook nuts. He just can't stand it. I'm sorry even that I brought it up, because now we're gonna have a whole thing. I don't know. For me, I have question marks about it. I wish they had made an effort to modernize without changing things that were fine as they were.
Okay, and he says, regarding washing tees, I suspect there's more grat inside than out.
Washing t-shirts?
Yes.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
I think that my issue is I washed baby and toddler clothes for so long where most of the grat is, on the outside, and I don't know, I guess that's just what I do, but I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, you know what? There is no right, there is no wrong.
As long as it's clean.
Okay.
This is from the 6105 video. From Daniel Blair of the Blair Watch Project. Another resist proof from early 1970. I will add this to my database. None of the resist proofs I've seen have dial dates.
Which is really interesting because, as you know, or may know, or as I remember, sorry, not one but two fire trucks.
Interesting.
I just did another one of these, and and I told that customer, like I told this customer, oh, it's got to be a service style, and I didn't know that it was in this window, and so I posted, and we talked about the deal with these, any data about them, and how we would find that. There's no advertisement in the world that would show the resist dial and the proof on the same watch. I can't imagine something like that would even exist. And we know for a fact that Seiko has a habit, or had a habit, of putting out weird, short-lived variants to sort of, my theory is to use up parts. There's that 6139 6007 Mexican 6139. They're like blue dials only with, God, what is it? I forget, but they're like this weird mash of like case and movement, which is something that you see. This is another one that's possible. Well, of course, there's the 6139 notch resist, which I found, but getting this kind of data is extremely valuable, and I've done it twice in the last like 3 months.
Biff Tannen BTTF. I think Daniel Blair has a list of serials for several proof resist 6105s. I also owned one that was about 150 units away from Daniel's watch, so I do believe it was a thing based on his evidence that they were from a short period of time in summer 1971. Are Seiko's underpowered by design? From Biff Tannen. I would think that there must be a mainspring out there for Swiss watches that comes close to the dimensions of a 6159 spring.
Yeah, there are. Somebody in the comments actually listed out what that was, and he said he's gonna order one and try it out, basically, and see how it goes. If we find a source for it and putting in a little more oomph, I mean, chasing those numbers, trying to get high amplitude is really, it's one of these things. I've always felt that Seiko has been, yes, we all know Seiko seem to, sorry, it's just like pressured speaking. There's so many things I need to talk about. I've always had this inferiority complex about Seiko's, 6000 series Seikos especially, because they ran lower power, and that it was so hard to sort of squeeze some more, some higher numbers out of them. And we try to, and it's really kind of frustrating, and it really bugged me that I didn't seem to have a good answer for why that was. I could give a general answer. It was my general guess that they just seemed kind of loosey-goosey, and they were, they were, a little sloppier, and Seikos just ran lower. But I always felt the inadequacy of that answer. And not that I didn't believe it, it's certainly true, but I didn't feel it was a big enough thing to describe what we see, what we apparently are all seeing in terms of the amplitudes of Seiko. If we can get better amplitude, let's do it. I think a Seiko 6000 series running at a real high amplitude could potentially introduce more wear over time. I don't. It's something that we need to research, and something that I would seriously consider doing every single time, because I blow a lot of time chasing numbers, for just spending a lot of time for really minimal gains, going through a complete movement, multiple times to try to get a couple, 3 points more. And if the problem isn't actually the thing that I'm going at, it's the fact that there isn't enough raw power, coming out of the mainspring. So if that's something that we can do, I'm real curious about that.
Bob Bressy 5414. My major experience with Seiko movements is that every watch that I own with a 7S26 movement keeps better time than my watches with newer NH35 and 36 movements. I'm not really sure why that is.
The 7S26, especially the 7S26A, what a movement. What a movement. The 7S26A is just great. They always give fantastic numbers. They cruise easily and smoothly and steadily and accurately in the 270s all day long. They're beautiful, even unserviced. They give really, really good service. They went to the B very shortly, which changed a couple things, including that was the first time the balance got changed, I believe. And then they went to the C, which had the new balance and some other stuff. They just run beautifully. They just run absolutely beautifully, and I love them. So I'm with you.
Philip McCracken 697. Of course, the amplitude is lower by design. Do you think Seiko doesn't know how to engineer a watch movement?
Oh, of course Seiko knows how to engineer a watch
Aggro
movement.
much? What the frig?
But the question is, Seiko does, they seem to make a lot of decisions based on economies. Like they don't jewel these 6,000 series watches. The only one they could bring themselves to invest that in was the 6159 with its heavy duty, its heavy duty mainspring pushing that high beat, train around. You need a lot of power, and even with those high beats, they typically run in the 220, 230, 240 range. They do not run in the 270s. They simply don't. So that actually adds another piece. The idea that Seiko might be, shooting for an underpowered mainspring, which of course, will increase the power reserve, and that's something that they are serious about. It's a power reserve, and so maybe that's why. But of course, Seiko knows what they're doing. I want to know why they're doing what they're doing. I want to make sense of it. So, instead of, feeling inadequate and beating myself up for low amplitudes for all these years, it would be nice to know that, in fact, it's literally because of understrength mainsprings. That would be validating in a way. I would think that would, I could pat myself on the back a little bit for persevering. So could we all.
Vector Gen, do you think that Seiko deliberately underpowered these movements specifically because the arbors were not jeweled? You should put a beefier mainspring in a non-modified movement and see if it causes damage.
Well, it's an interesting idea. It looks like I'm hopeful that a beefier Swiss mainspring exists that will be a drop-in test solution. What it would be interesting to do is would I have it in me to do this?
I don't know.
Fully service a watch, right? Fully service a movement, all ready to go. Look at the numbers, see how everything is, check it out, then rip it back apart and put the new mainspring in there and do the numbers again. I just don't know that I have it in me.
It can be a long-term project.
Yeah, it could be a long-term project, but I think it's something that's very interesting. I think they didn't jewel the arbors because they didn't want to, because they were trying to save money. I think that they used weaker mainsprings for increasing the power reserve. It's the only thing I can think of, and extending. They seem to like the idea of having a Seiko watch give about 10 years of service and be able to do that 10 years, and then conk out with their theory probably being that people will just buy a new watch rather than having it fixed.
Weekend watch repair. Hey Spencer, I've been wondering the same thing. Perhaps the 6146 spring be the same as the 6159. I haven't bothered to look it up, but the dimensions on the 6146 should fit fine in the 6105 barrel, although it is slightly shorter and will affect the power reserve. Not really an issue, though, in an automatic movement. Overall, it has the same dimensions except for thickness, which is 0.15 in the 6146 instead of the 0.115 on the factory 6105 spring. GR2537X shows to be the part number from Cousins. However, I don't know if the inner loop on the spring will accommodate the arbor without adjustment. I will source one of these springs and give it a try on a freshly serviced movement. I really appreciate this video and would be interested to know if you're going to give it a try. I would love to hear your thoughts. I just recently finished a 6106C and was pleased to get the amplitude in the high 220s and mid-230s after the full service and barrel arbor jewel upgrades. If we can source a different spring, whether it be a GR2537X or something different, it would be a game changer. Always enjoy your channel. Thanks for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said where, at a certain point, if you're trying to make your your MG faster, you're going to be limited at a certain point by the carburation that it's got on it. You put bigger carbs on it, or you put a turbo, which people do. You put more power into it, you're going to get more power out of it, and that's the long and the short of it. So I'm very interested in that because I've been banging my metaphorical head against the theoretical amplitude wall for as long as I've been doing this. I've been banging my head on the wall about it. And if it's underpowered mainsprings, in part, then I would be excited about that cure, and I would start, strongly, if it worked out correctly, and if it wasn't going to introduce any more problems. And as some other people have said, and they're probably going to say in these questions, maybe 230, 240 amplitude, 220 is perfectly acceptable. Maybe, what's fine for the Swiss isn't really applicable to the Japanese tech. So maybe there's that too. The Seiko servicing guide doesn't really mention that at all. It doesn't talk about it doesn't really talk about amplitude. It talks about poor amplitude. It has like samples. You can look at the time grapher tapes, the old style time grapher tapes, to show different problems. I don't know. I could put a segment on that in. Why don't I just put a segment on that in real quick? Okay, here we are with our handy dandy Seiko watch technical guide. Flipping over here. What do we got? Let's back it up just a hair. Okay, just like that. The only mention of amplitude I can find is right here. Amplitude off beat. Illustration 6. These two lines show an unbalanced swing of the impulse pin, which will disturb the normal operations of watch and must be corrected. And so that's the illustration that they use. That's the one time they mention it. So they're not even rolling out a number at all. We don't know what their criteria might be, or anything like that. There's so much great information in these books. Look at that. I love it. I could look at it all day long. I like the 7619 movements. They're really, I remember I compared one of these to a Rolex 1570 as well, and they're really nice movements. They really are. The 8306 family is fantastic. I've never dealt with an 8800. That's a nice illustration. Look at that. Your pillar wheel. Cam. Very cool stuff. Okay. And we're back.
Bruce Barlow. Yeah, I think you are correct. My 6309s and 6105s are putting out 210 to 230 amplitude. My 6138, however, puts out 260 to 270 with its original mainspring. When I do use an aftermarket new spring, I've had good results with the GR25341X. They take a little longer to come up to full power, but when they do, they hold good amplitude. Also to consider is what grease and oils are being used in the barrel and on the pallet stones. I get good results using 8213 on the barrel walls, 8200 on the spring, and 9415 on the pallet jewels. I never use Seiko grease. A great topic to see what results others are finding.
That's funny. I should try doing... I need to do a watch project for myself. I want to add a watch to my watch box. I'm going to go through my watches and see what I can restore and wear. I will try your mainspring method instead of what I do. What I do is what Seiko's guidance, which is, Seiko's guidance is S2. I put in, I make sure to get that the inside faces the barrel, because that grease, it really wants to work its way through. And on the barrel arbors itself, I use 8200. But the next time I do it, I will try your
Won't the
method.
oils get mixed up once you put the whole thing together?
To a degree, but they sort of stick where they're gonna be. 8200. The only thing about 8200 is that it's not a synthetic, which means it can. You can get varnishes appearing as the volatile elements outgas. So that's the only thing. But you know what? I'll do it. Who cares?
Okay.
Okay.
NGHDSJD. That makes sense. The only problem, the reduced power reserve from the reduced length isn't really that terrible on an automatic watch anyway. Coincidentally, I have a Citizen 8110 chronograph movement that had a broken mainspring and tried to find a good replacement and noticed that the Seiko 6106, etc. spring is actually a good fit. It's just a bit longer and thinner. Turns out that the results in a bit too poor amplitude and poor timekeeping for the 8110, which of course is a higher beat movement. If you find a stronger spring for the 61 series, that should fit the 8110 too.
Now, isn't that a great piece? Isn't that a great piece of knowledge? That's a great thing to know. That's a great thing to know. Everybody needs to write that down.
Get your pencils.
Get your pencils. If this new higher power mainspring works, it will also work in a Citizen 8110, which is the Brad Pitt chrono watch. So that would then actually, I need to go through and do your Brad Pitt. I need to, it's that.
Well, which one?
No, would you want your actual gold Brad Pitt?
Yes.
Or do you, not the silver one, you'd want the actual?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, that sounds like a reasonable goal, to actually then finally get one of these higher power mainsprings and go through that watch and see how that does. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's not pie in the sky.
Well, you'll find out. Vintage watch services. It's a great question and a very interesting discussion, but I think the premise is wrong. 270 is just a convenient number, 3/4 of a full rotation, set by the Swiss based on their ways of doing things. Seiko watches with 230 to 240 amplitudes are just as accurate as Swiss watches with 270 to 280 amplitude, and lesser power should lead to lesser wear. Thus, my vote would go to Seiko's approach. Also, Swiss watch manufacturers do not actually test their watches for 270 at full wind. They test them after 24 hours. For the Omega 550 family, for instance, the amplitude after 24 hours should be a minimum of 160. So this whole 270 holy grail is a bit exaggerated. It's really about whether the watch runs accurately or not. Granted, there is a relation between the supplementary arc and the engaging arc lift angle, but that's a longer discussion.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into lift angles and dealing with moving pallet stones or any of that kind of stuff.
I might fall asleep.
Yeah, it's just one of these things. The pallet fork, well, I'm not going to get into it right now. I could sort of describe it real quick. Let me just scan over this because this person said many things. Yeah, I read over your comment and some of the salient things stuck in my head, so I got it. Ooh, that blanket's nice and warm.
Yes.
I have noticed Seikos with lower amplitudes can absolutely be accurate. The 6200 series, but they run at like 260, 270. The 6200s they're a beautiful, beautiful movement. And they can be just as accurate as anything you can possibly imagine. But yeah, I mean, 7000 series service can run in the 260s, 270s, no problem. They've got lighter, smaller wheels. They've got a smaller balance. I don't remember the numbers on 5126s. It's been a while since I've done one, but I think they are further up towards the Swiss level. Usually I think in like the 250s, I think that they should go. Bellmatics, those things, you're always in danger of overbanking those things. They're good. Their mainspring is strong enough.
What, are you listening at the birds?
No, would a Bellmatic mainspring? I wonder what that. Somebody remind me to look up the specs on a Bellmatic mainspring, because those things they're the only Seiko movement that I have to watch for overbanking, which is where the balance swings too far because there's too much power going into it. But that's 6,000 series. Yeah, I get fine numbers, accuracy numbers out of them, and like the two. I really am happiest in like get me into the 230s. I can deal with that. That's cool. 230s, 240s. That's absolutely fantastic. If we start getting into the 250s, 260s, 250s. I'm happy. 260s and 270s. I start wondering what I did wrong because it's just abnormal. 210. Okay, but if it's sort of in the teens and hanging there, I really want it to be 220 and above. Omega saying it's got to be a minimum of 160. That's barely running. Your Omega is a 550.
Okay.
Just so you have a dog in this fight.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a fun discussion, and I'm glad we're having it. I'd be very curious. Remember, if somebody's bored, look up the 4006 Mainspring. I want to know what the deal with that is.
Marcos 1388. Is this also under power problem with my Seiko 56119 6003? Is a 6159 barrel compatible?
Yeah, but it's not practical. All 6159 parts are rare and they're expensive. I have a very small Dragon's Hoard of 6159 parts that I only have because the guy at at the Perrin Auto Watch Parts House who deals with Seiko, they weren't going to be dealing with vintage Seiko anymore, and they had all these parts, and he said, hey, I know you work on this stuff, do you want them? And I bought everything that he had, and it wasn't very much. Finding 6159 stuff is hard, so a barrel's not an answer. We have to hope that it's this replacement, one of these replacement mainsprings.
Super Cruise. Nice observation. I typically see anywhere from 210 to 230s on a service 6105, 240s on a good day. I have always thought a hotter spring would solve this issue. Thanks for your video. I guess the trade-off would be slightly lower power reserve, maybe.
Maybe. Well, I mean, if the length of the spring is the same, the only thing is that you've got to be very careful that the mainspring can't take up any more room than 50% inside the barrel. So it's one of the things, you get a thicker mainspring and it's going to be a little shorter. So, I mean, I don't know, you couldn't, I think, have a thicker mainspring that was the same length. I mean, you'd have to have some kind of a trade-off. But I think it's really important to talk about.
CMB 1972. Hi, a channel on YouTube, Weekend Watch Repair, which we already answered their question, who mentions you regularly, by the way.
I read that sentence and I was like, people watch us? I really was. It was my first thing. I was like, oh my God, that means that there's people talking about us.
Has substituted 6138 mainsprings with Swiss mainsprings with higher amplitude results. Might be worth having a chat with Adam.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning us. Weekend Watch Repair. I'm so sorry to say I'm not familiar with your channel, but I will go and I will look at it.
You don't watch channels?
No, I don't. I watch auto archaeology things. I watch shipwreck stuff. Things like that. Lots of auto archaeology.
Like
archaeology of automobiles. Dudes hauling old random
yes,
cars
I
out
get
of the
it.
woods.
Just when I hear archaeology, I think Indiana Jones, and I'm like, cars aren't that old.
No, it's true. It's true, but you can have car archaeology.
It's true.
There was a Bugatti that got, I think the guy, it was in like 1921, incredibly rare, expensive Bugatti. And the guy didn't want to pay for it or something, or there was some other issue with it. So he drove it into the lake. And it sat there in the bottom. And like half of it just rusted away because it was lying on its side. And they finally raised it. And there was this whole thing because all the Bugattis were hand built. And there's whole lore around this particular car. And so there you are. Auto archaeology.
Okay. JXH. Question. In an automatic movement, would it still be capable of self-winding given a stronger than stock mainspring? Perhaps they settled on a more delicate or wimpy mainspring so that the automatic system, where applicable, has a chance to push it around. Maybe the counterweight would need to be switched to a more aggressive one, but then the case might not fit.
That is a great question, and you have imagined what the reality is. The 6159 has to have a higher power mainspring because you're pushing the balance to go really, really fast. And even though they made the balance wheels smaller, they made everything finer, it's still, you have to have so much power to push amplitude on that heavy, stiff hairspring that's in that high beat balance. And so, like, the high power mainspring will, if you're lucky, give you 220, 230, right? So you take, can I read his question?
Sorry.
That's okay.
That was the last question.
No, that's fine. I got ahead of myself. Oh, so that's the thing, though. So you require a lot more power. You get a lot more power running backwards through the train, stopping the watch from winding. So the 6159 weight is bigger. It is beefier. They have a stronger oscillating framework with ball bearings. The cases are designed to take this beefier mainspring. But as I said, it's harder to push that train around because that's why it requires so much more power. The 6000 series, 61 series, it's not that hard to push the train around, which means, therefore, that this higher power mainspring doesn't require as much power going into it to wind. I've tested it. This 6105, the Vietnam one, it's here, and I'm still looking at it. And because I was curious about the same question, would this thing, that was one of my questions, whether or not this was doable. Could the automatic winding system for a 6105 handle a 6159 winding it? It doesn't seem to have a problem at all. It pushes it right over, and it winds up nicely, and I think everything's ducky. I really do. So I think it's something that needs to be looked at, and hopefully we'll have an answer about it. That's it?
Yep.
Okay. Folks, I thank you so much, as always, for watching the video. If you're still watching at this point, I thank you so much for your support. It means everything to us. And we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Okay, bye.